Well, hi, everybody. It's Kim Winter. Welcome to 2022. Thanks for joining us. It's my great pleasure today here on Logistics Executive TV to be interviewing another iconic New Zealander. This New Zealander is very well known in literary circles, in conference circles. He's an international speaker. He's a storyteller. He's an author. And he's a motivator. And he's got some pretty interesting aspects to the journey that he's been on. And without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce James Kerr. Hey, James.
Hey, Kim. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for joining us from somewhere in the UK today, yeah?
London today, I think.
Yes,
looking outside, it seemed to be.
Good on you. So, James, thanks for joining us. You've got many strings to your bow. Today, I want to really talk to you about leadership. And I wanted to explore briefly a very well-known book in leadership circles, certainly in New Zealand as well, and in the sporting world as well. So we'll talk about that shortly. But as I always do with my guests, I'd like to hear a little bit about for our listeners and our audience, a little bit about your background and your upbringing, because there's always plenty of interesting stuff there.
All right, great. Well, I'm a Kiwi. Although I was born in Kuala Lumpur or Petaling Jaya in Malaysia, my dad was doing a thing called the Colombo Plan. He was an academic in resource management and took my his new wife there, and I was born. But then arrived back in New Zealand at about age 2 and grew up in the McKenzie country, Hakataramea. Macaw country is known as, and then the McKenzie country, and then kind of moved as far as Christchurch. Then I moved to Sydney when I left school and studied film and communications, went into advertising, started getting interested in teams, worked through a career of branding and so on and so forth. And my sweet spot really now is high performing teams, how to great teams become and stay great. And I get to work with a lot of amazing teams around the world. I'm a writer and a speaker, a coach and a consultant. So I work in that kind of high performance space.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And you talk about the McKenzie country, and for those who are not from New Zealand, the McKenzie country, of course, is a spectacular piece of the planet. New Zealand being the youngest country to come out of the sea, if you like, geologically. Tell us a little bit about the McKenzie country, about the deep south of New Zealand, because the next stop pretty much is the South Pole, and what effect that upbringing had on you as a child.
Oh, great, interesting question. I think big horizons, small people and big horizons. It's a very humbling place. And it's also a place of you either choose to be there or you want to escape. I loved being there when I was a child, but there was that dream of what was over the hills, I think. It's high country, it's desert, almost desert, in the sense it doesn't get a lot of rain. It has big open skies. You can see all the stars in the sky. It's I think a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So that sense of looking out, I think, was a big part of my upbringing, and a lot of time. And a lot of time to think. And I think that's where my writing thing started, to fill those hours, probably.
There you go, yeah. And, of course, that part of the world is famous for Queenstown down in South Otago, very good wine, spectacular scenery, a lot of movies made down there. So it's interesting you had that sort of background as well. So, James, you progressed through your career and as a very well-known author, not only in New Zealand but internationally, and then you came up with a book which I fell in love with, and not only because it was about the All Blacks and the New Zealand famous rugby team and probably the world's most successful professional team of any sort of sport, but it was a iconic leadership piece which I bought box loads of, and used in my executive coaching business. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about that experience, because it was a very rare situation. I think you were the very first author ever to be allowed to live in, if you like, with the All Blacks for a period of time, to be able to come up with the book that you did called Legacy. And I think you've got a copy of it there somewhere, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. It's something I prepared a little earlier. This is Legacy. Well, the All Blacks can teach us about the business of life. And in it, I think it was a unique situation. I had an opportunity. I worked on another book with the All Blacks, a book called Manna. And I guess I had the relationships and the insight into what was going on. And what really intrigued me wasn't the rugby side of this rugby team. It was the team side, it was the culture side. And particularly an idea that really has infiltrated the team, I think, from Maori culture, and that idea of legacy, of lineage. It was interesting you asked me, to tell a little bit about my story at the beginning of this piece, and that idea of whakapapa, of your lineage, of being part of a long unbroken chain, from the beginning of time to the end of eternity, intrigued me. And I thought, what an extraordinary kind of way of looking at the world, of seeing our role in the world, of doing our part in our time with the team, this bigger team, if you like, the team of humans, if you like, but any particular environment that we're part of. And so I was intrigued to write about that and really use the All Blacks as a case study of how a culture creates competitive advantage, how a culture creates character, how a culture creates resilience, how you can create an environment around yourself that allows you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And therefore, as the All Blacks say, leave the jersey in a better place. Represent yourself and write your story on the world with the limited time that we've got here to write. So that, or to write that story. So that's really was the kernel, I guess, of Legacy as a book.
Yeah. I was very fortunate to be able to, through members of your family, to be able to get a hold of a copy of Manna, which was a very big photographic piece, and I have it here in Dubai with me. I brought it up from Sydney with me, which you ended up signing, by the way. I'm not too sure you knew where it was going, but I've got a signed copy of it, and that was an amazing piece as well. But Legacy, there are certain things in there. I mean, I've coached hundreds of people all around the world on the executive side, and whenever I give somebody, as I always give them a copy of that book, people always come back to me and say, you know what, wow, I'm glad I've seen this book, because there's 2 or 3 things in there that I didn't really think about. And you talk about leaving the jersey in a better place than it was. The key things I remember, and my nephew's here from Kenya at the moment, and I think he's got a copy of my book, so I don't have it here to refer to, but I think things like leaders always eat last and leaders sweep the floor. And these basic axioms of common sense and humility and humbleness in that culture, which is carried through this, because there's no logical reason why such a small country has been so successful in this professional sport over many decades, other than the culture, as you say.
Yeah, and that humility piece. It's a chapter. Those who haven't read the book would Sweep the Sheds. The All Blacks, one of the first things I noticed about the All Blacks is that after a game, and you have to imagine there are 50,000 people leaving the stadium and kids going to bed dreaming of All Blacks glory, and these are the most famous rugby players in the world. But after a game, they took the time and the care to tidy up after themselves, to sweep the sheds, to sweep all of that mud and blood and strapping into small piles, to kind of take care of business. And I kind of inquired into why, and I was really intrigued with this sort of idea. First, one of the first lines was, well, the All Blacks take care of themselves. No one takes care of the All Blacks. It's about, if you're humble, you're not looking for handouts. You're not looking for somebody to do it for you. You're in charge of your own ship, in a way. And I think that goes into a deeper way, that humility is the antidote to entitlement. And if there's one thing I think that's the enemy of high performance, it's entitlement, unearned glory, that somebody owes you something. Because, at the core of high performers, I think, is absolute accountability and responsibility for the task.
Yep.
There are no excuses. There's nowhere to hide, and you shouldn't try to hide, because actually the more that it burns to face up with loss or failure or limitations or whatever, the more you can do about it, the more you can develop and you can learn. You stop learning when you start kind of getting entitled. And I don't think it's a coincidence that humility is also part of the ethos of, for instance, the British SAS, the fabled special forces, or the Navy SEALs, the US maritime special forces, because I think over time, small teams that have had to kind of prevail in difficult circumstances have evolved in a certain way. I think as humans, we've evolved in a certain way, and that's what works. It's not being a nice guy. Nice guys finish first. It's nice guys do finish first because actually they work with people, and we work as a team of teams in life. Life's a kind of, we hunt in packs as human beings. And I think that ability to put your ego aside and contribute to something bigger than yourself is a tremendously powerful servant leader model, if you like, of leadership and of living a life. And anyone who's got kids, anyone who's got has a family knows that we give ourselves to them, and that's us at our best. And it's the most satisfying thing. But making that contribution to that environment that we're part of is, it's not hippie altruism. It's the fundamental factor of success. If we create value, we get value. Yep. That reciprocity, the golden rule, it's all bundled in there somehow, I think.
No, and the thing about the book is that, and we'll leave it here, but it is a book you can pick up at any point. It's not a tome. It's probably only about 150 pages from memory, but you can pick it up at any time and pick a chapter and just go and have a look at it. And especially as an executive leadership person, anywhere, any form of leader can have a look at that, or anybody learning can pick that up and just take the lessons with them. So it's brilliant. I consider it the best book I've ever read. And I tend to read a few books. I'm ordering another box of them because I just contracted to coach about another 30 people. So it helps me out big time, because I just go,
hey, there you go. Sales just like that. Fantastic.
And I just say, hey, read this, and then we'll sit down and do some coaching. So thanks so much for that. It's really good. Hey, let's before we wrap up, let's talk about what's up with you currently. I mean, during COVID, of course, we haven't been there's been quite a few here in the Middle East, but I don't know, there's been conferences. You're a well-known speaker. You do a lot of corporate work as well, motivational work, leadership, as we said. What's going on with you currently? What plans have you got?
Well, what I'm, COVID obviously, for somebody who's involved with teams and groups, was a bit of a killer blow for a little while. And I kind of looked at all my appointments dropping off the map, and it was a real test of, practice what you preach in terms of resilience and rebooting and getting back up on the floor and all of that. But I sort of segued into a lot more work online. And I found that the form that's better online is more of a workshop, masterclass, interactive. And I actually think that Zoom is and the like are actually wonderful tools for bringing groups together, particularly multinationals who are in a lot of different parts of the world, and creating a conversation, a collective conversation. And that's been so I've been doing quite a lot of that. I'm writing.
Yep.
I'm writing a follow-up to Legacy called the Legacy Workbook, which is a more of a how-to book, not a how-to manual exactly, but a how-to book that poses a lot of questions about, are you really deeply going into this in this particular area, in this area? And it's a define, design, and deliver. Create your identity, create your culture, and then recreate yourself as how do you lead that kind of high performance environment. So I'm neck deep in that at the moment. I have papers spread all around me right at the moment. And then I do some consulting and coaching with high performance environments. So I'm doing something with the British military at the moment within the special force kind of area. And I'm working with a premiership football team and a couple of other high-performing teams. I kind of coach the coaches or work with some of the players. For the Army, it's an identity project. Who are we? What do we stand for? Why does it matter where we're going? Creating that kind of ethos of excellence for an emerging special force unit. So, it's I love this stuff. So I'm playing in my sandpit. I'm really having a fantastic time at the moment.
Great. Well, it's awesome. And I always like to wrap up by having our guests share one or two insights about if it's leadership in this case for yourself and foresight and business and culture. What would be one or two tips you would have for leaders moving forward? It's been a pretty rough road.
Yeah.
Some companies have done very well, but I mean, it's been a pretty rough road the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think maybe three things. One is about resilience. And this sort of drifted out of sport and military, actually, as a metaphor for how to think of building yourself as a resilient being. And it's a metaphor of a four-legged chair. A lot of the time we build our lives on just one leg, our professional success, but actually professional success should be a byproduct of standing on strong foundations. So maybe think about designing your life as a chair with four strong legs, an emotional, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And make sure you got an element of each in every day. Are you taking care of yourself physically? Because to perform to your highest ability, you want to be fit for purpose, if you like. Emotionally, are you connected and surrounded by people you love and who love you the best that you can be? Mental, are you able to switch off you create that gap between what I call that gap between reaction and response? If we react, we tend to be defensive and stressed, but how do we respond? And have we got enough space in there to do that? And spiritual, whether that's music or nature or God or the sea or whatever, do we have a way of transcending ourselves? And so, in difficult times, I think coming back to some of those fundamentals to give ourselves a strong place to sit, if you like, is a really nice way to start thinking about building a resilience over time. Second, just very, very quickly is I've always loved my grandmother had a motto, which was just be useful. And it comes down to that reciprocity, look for work. How can we make a contribution to others? Because if we can do that, the score will take care of itself and it'll come around. And the third, I think, is just that idea of, there was a very good article in Harvard Business Review about the role of a leader at the moment. Pre-COVID, the role of the leader was a doer. Let's get this done. Let's be productive. Let's make this happen. And that's still, of course, really important. We still need to be productive. But there's another role which is really about to be there for other people. Because everybody's going through and has gone through, this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. No one quite knows what's going to happen next. We watch our gigs, falling off our calendar, or our own version of that. Everybody's been through something. Some people are caught in small, hutches that they live in, and some people are worried about the mortgage on big houses. But everyone's got something. And so leaders who can be there for their people can create a space of belonging and belief and compassion and connection, I think are more needed in this world than ever. So that's my top three. There you go.
Well, I'm glad I'm recording this, James, because, all rubbish aside, that's really quintessential stuff. And from the heartland, from a New Zealander from the heartland, and I know your family's got a very deep history, many generations in New Zealand, and done a lot of research on that. And the sort of stuff that you're coming up with is absolutely essential thinking. I think for leaders, I'm really going to be leveraging a lot of what you've been talking about. I think there's so much common sense there. There's so much to think about, because quite frankly, I don't think anybody or any of us know anybody that has all of those four legs to the stool right. We all challenge ourselves and strive in life to get that balance. It's a continuous challenge, but thanks for bringing that to the fore. And, thanks for sharing your background with us and the book is legacy, what the All Blacks can teach us about the business of life. I see that really now as a diminishing part of the journey that you're on. I hold it in such high esteem, and I'll be utilising leveraging that book continuously. But I look forward to staying in touch with you, hearing more about the journey perhaps later in the year. And stay well and good luck. And as you know, I know another member of your family, and pass all my good regards to George as well.
I will do. Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you everyone for listening, and take care out there.
Thanks, James. Absolute pleasure, and thanks again for sharing.